Hello, everybody. Hi, everybody's here.
Hey.
Hey.
Hi. So, for all of us, all of you guys tuning in on Facebook and YouTube, welcome to our first ever live episode of the Big E, the elephant in the room. We have our beautiful round table here. Say hi, everybody.
Hi.
Hello.
So if you are a new fan of Elephant in the Room, or if you are a loyal fan, let me just give you a little bit of a background on it. So the Big E, the Elephant in the Room, is a show, an online show right now, and on radio, where we discuss, yes, where we discuss taboo topics that happen in the church and what happens when you do not discuss those taboo topics. So hence the elephant in the room, something that we kind of all know that's going on, but nobody talks about. So we've done about, I think, 6 episodes so far. Am I right?
Seven.
Seven. Oh, they all blend together after a while. We've done 7 episodes so far. And let me introduce myself. My name is Tiffany Jackman. I am the producer of the show. And I usually am behind the scenes. I'm usually on Zoom, managing everything, editing everything. But today I am going to be playing kind of the Andy Cohen, where we're bringing everybody in and I'm going to be asking some questions because we do have a time limit on our episodes where we can only make it under 30 minutes. And so there's always some questions, like sometimes I'm behind the scenes like, oh, I wish I could ask them this. I wish I could ask them that. But now we get that chance. And also, as guests that are tuning in, you guys can feel free to ask questions. Just type them into the chat and I will bring them in and ask our guests this. But as you're typing in, just remember, be respectful of everybody's opinions. We're all trying to just be better people here, right? Right, guys?
Amen.
That's right. Amen. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce all these lovely faces that you see here. We have Melissa and Jackie, who are the 2 hosts of the show. You guys say hi.
Hi. How are you?
I'm dandy. How are you? And we have 4 guests from 4 of our previous episodes. So we have over here, we have CB Murray. So CB Murray was on our episode where we discussed Hidden in Plain Sight, where we talked about LGBTQ issues in the church. Very, very hot topic, right? Yes. We also have Tiffany Andrews. She was on and I love your name, Tiffany.
Thank you.
Nice fit. So Tiffany was on an episode titled Ministers and Minors, where very interesting episode. I grew up in Atlanta where there's some issues with things like that in there. I'm not going to call any names, but Ministers and Minors was the episode where we discussed where there's sometimes people who prey on others in the church and prey on children in the church. So that's a very, very hot topic, big elephant in the room that needs to be addressed. We also have Raymond King. Hi, Raymond.
Hello.
So Raymond's episode was on mental health, where we have some mental health issues going on in the church that are not being addressed. They're often being characterized as maybe you're not having a good spiritual walk, or they kind of demonize it, but that's something else that needs to be addressed. And then we have Miss Stacy Wallen over there. Hi, Stacy.
Hey.
So Stacy was on an episode called The Missing Millennials, which in that episode we discussed why it might be that millennials, like myself, I call myself a millennial, even though I'm kind of an elder millennial because I was born in the 80s, but I call myself why millennials are turning away from the church. I have my own feelings about that, but yes, we can talk about that all day, but we're going to talk about everybody's episode a little bit. So thank you guys for all coming back in. I've really enjoyed working on your episodes, and I know we have some burning questions to ask, and you guys feel free to say where you're tuning in from. We love to hear when people are tuning in from all over the country, or sometimes our international guests, and feel free to chime in with some questions. So the first question I have a list of questions for you guys, is for Melissa and Jackie, who are the brainchilds of this. So you guys, why what made you want to do this show called The Big E? Either of you guys.
Yeah, thank you so much. Hi, everybody. This is so exciting. Thank you again for tuning in. So, as many people know, us who know us personally, Melissa and I grew up in the same church in Harlem, UK. And we've seen a lot, we experienced a lot, we have a lot in common, and of course, we've kept in contact all these years. So a lot of times, Melissa and I would have these wonderful conversations, things that were very personable. And it was to the point where I'm like, Melissa, I think we need to get this out, some type of healing process going on in some type of panel way. And we talked about it for about a year. And here we are. Here we are.
Wow.
Yes. Just to piggyback on Jackie, yes, we grew up in the same church, and we experienced and we saw a lot of things that happened as we were going from little ones to adulthood. And we realized there were a lot of issues that a lot of people would just shun away in our church and just didn't want to talk about it, or as we will be discussing today, kind of pray about it or fast about it and it will go away. And we just said, that's not enough. We need to do more, because there are people out there that are crying, that are in need, that need help, that need some direction. And we thought this would be a great platform to discuss these issues. So it was just great to just know that Jackie and I were on the same page, to know that we saw the same issues and it was time for us to address it today.
Absolutely.
Very nice, very nice. Well, thank you guys. It's been a pleasure to help bring this show to life and talk about these issues. I just want to shout out a couple of things that we have some people tuning in. We have Robert Andrews, Don L coming in from New York, John Casaveos coming, and sorry if I butchered anybody's name, tuning in from Orlando, and Don L is coming in from the BX. That's the Bronx. Netta Halls Freeman. I want to shout Netta Halls Freeman. Whenever you guys hear a voiceover, that's her.
Yes. Thank you.
Yes, I mean, her voice is like golden. We love it. We have Cheryl Bradshaw Ezekiels. That's my Auntie Cheryl. Say hi, Auntie Cheryl, guys.
Hey, Cheryl.
Latoya Jackman tuning in from Nashville. That's my sister. We got some family support going on here. Mark,
Yes.
one of our other guests. So thank you guys. Oh, and my mom is tuning in from right here in New Jersey. Hi, Mommy.
And Tiffany, we have Mark Cooper, one of our former guests, on here as well.
Yes. Hey, Mark. Hey, Mark. How you doing? Oh, we have Autumn tuning in from Philly in the house. So keep coming, and you guys as guests, please share. We want more people to tune in. Oh, we have Catherine coming in from Los Angeles.
Now,
Nice.
wow. Catherine, I saw your post. I saw Catherine's post, and I thank you tremendously.
Yes. We have Orion. That's my boo. From Dirty Jersey. And Carice tuning in from Nashville. That's my sister. Yep, family in the house. I know there are more people than my family coming in, so I'm going to need you guys to shout yourselves out. All right. So now, Jackie and Melissa, I have another question for you guys. We have all these beautiful guests here. How do you guys find your guests that come into the show? And then guests, I have a follow-up for you. What made you want to agree to come on this show? Put your faces out there. Put your stories out there. So Jackie and Melissa, you guys go first, how you found them, and then what candy did you induce them with to make them want to come on the show?
Well, I can honestly say, due to all of our topics that we came up with, a lot of them, honestly, we kind of at first we were in like a stage of, oh no, who's going to be willing to talk about these topics? Who's going to be willing to be truly transparent about these issues? And I think as we started writing up our topics and writing up the questions to be able to discuss these issues, it just became clear, like, I guess honestly, God resonated in both of our hearts to just say, let's reach out to this one. Tiffany, I know her personally because that's my son and her son are best friends. And I knew that she has always been truly transparent in so many ways. And I said, listen, this is a platform we're about to discuss, and I would love for you to be part of it. So that's how I came. We brought Tiffany on board. Jackie, oh, we have Stacy, Dr. Stacy Wallen. Let's just get back to how we all work together, all in the same church. Jackie, myself, and Stacy. We all grew up in the same church, and Jackie and I both agreed when we did the Missing Millennial episode. We thought Stacy would be the perfect person to be able to be transparent about that topic due to the fact of her career path that she has taken in working in the educational field. So we thought that she would be a great fit to discuss that topic.
See, and here I
Yes,
thought
and
that they chose me because, I look like I could be a millennial. And they're talking because I work with them. Good grief.
You know what they say, it doesn't crack, right? It doesn't.
That's
No,
right.
it doesn't crack.
That's
And of
right.
course, I had to bring in my wonderful cousin, Ray, because of course, he and our family, and we always have these candid conversations about everything. But when it came to mental health, it was obvious that he had to be a guest on the show. And this is something, of course, is missing. A lot of people, they call you crazy. They call you, oh, pray about it, and they'll go away. But Ray is so, he's a champion for mental health and for social work. And he was perfect for the show, Tiffany. And I just hope that everybody will go and get some help, because it's not easy to say, oh, we'll pray about it, it'll go away. You need support. We all need some form of support. So Ray was the perfect person for that. And of course, C. Murray, that Tiffany, got the perfect man for that topic as well.
Yes, so CB, I met CB when we did a project together. We did a music video together because he is amazingly talented. And then I went to one of CB does talks at churches, and I went to one of them. And then when this topic came up with Hidden in Plain Sight, I was like, there is nobody else that I could think of immediately that I want on this topic but CB Murray, and of course he blew us all away on the episode. So yeah, great guest all around. You guys make producing a show very easy, so thank you. So now to the guest, what made you guys want to be a part of the show when you were requested?
Well, let me speak up. I'm Tiffany Andrews. When Melissa mentioned it to me, I jumped on it immediately because, of course, the title just being the elephant in the room, an elephant being a very large animal, which means it's something everybody can see. But it's unfortunate it's in a room that everybody can see it, but no one is speaking about it. But while we're being silent, things are happening. And so I didn't speak from something I've heard about, something someone told me about, something I read. I spoke from my own personal experience. And so I said, if I can lend my voice to anything that can help somebody else, I'm going to hop on that immediately, because I know what I went through, how it impacted my life. And so because some things are not spoken of, it can impact your life in such a damaging way. So if I can just save some steps that were detrimental by speaking about it, then of course, why not? That becomes my mission in ministry. So I said, absolutely.
Thank you, Tiffany.
I did it for the shirt.
Oh, the shirt.
The shirt is comfy. And just so you guys know, we do provide these shirts. Everybody who's a guest gets a shirt. If you guys as viewers want a shirt, just hit us up and
Yes.
that one.
When Tiffany approached me, it was because as a young man coming into the church, I felt so put upon and so demoralized because of who I was. And I was made to change everything about myself so I would fit into this box that they wanted for someone to be a minister, so to speak. So I had to get rid of clothing. I had to stop what I was doing. I couldn't pursue the career I had. And I never wanted to see another young person abused that way or made to feel that they had to conform to some image, some imaginary image that made them a child of God when God was already their father.
Well said.
Well said. Wow, CB, you always know right what to say, and after that, we usually get quiet.
We're letting it marinate. We're letting it marinate.
Yeah, it's marinating.
Take it all in. Well,
I can speak up. Mental health was very important to me because I realized that that's something that the church really does not discuss. We talk about it, but not in a standpoint in my opinion, from a healthy standpoint. A lot of times we look down at someone who may be going through some type of mental health issues as they're being crazy or demonic, or they don't have it together, or, they don't even love God. But I think the important thing for me was to not only speak up to let individuals know that it's okay to say that you have some mental health issues, but also let everyone know, go get help. There's nothing wrong with it. It's important to tackle it before it becomes a major issue, and you begin to start understanding, and those things that you suppress, you'd be surprised at some of the things that you didn't think about yourself. And a therapist is there to help guide you as if it's a GPS system. So basically you tell them where you want to go, and they kind of help guide you into that. So when I was asked to do it, I was like, no problem. I'm definitely honored to do that.
I did it because they're family, and you don't have a choice with family. Family asks you to do something, you do it. But again, like they said, these conversations are not new. But I guess the other thing about doing it at this time, I felt like, this pandemic time, people really need an opportunity to connect and to be able to kind of talk about things. And I thought this was a good opportunity. And I just know that the work that this project is doing is going to grow.
Why, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Stacey.
So now we have, all of our guests and everything. Melissa and Jackie, how do you pick the topics that you come up with? Do you just have a list of elephants?
Yes,
Pretty much.
There was a whole lot of elephants.
Yes.
I actually have them coded.
You got a whole
And it was something that was dear to my heart. And, it was just so easy to go ahead and write the script for it. And it's just something that I was passionate about. A lot of people, of course, come to me over the years, and we have these private conversations, but it just stays there. Mm-hmm. So at this point, it's just like, okay, well, now it's time to, the scripture says anything that's in the dark must come to light. So at this point, we need to go ahead and bring these things to light and start to heal and to fix things, because we have that power to do that.
I agree with Jackie. I have resonated on a lot of these topics for quite some time. And Jackie and Stacey also know, and I'm bringing this up because it's just so relevant, how these topics really sometimes also came up because of my father. Yes. My father was very, very passionate. And now, why am I getting emotional on the live?
You're supposed to get emotional. That's daddy.
My father was very passionate about so many things that he wanted changed in the church for the young people, the young men, and just the community as a whole. And a lot of people kind of shunned away from some of these topics that we brought up and we've been discussing. And I just thought, unfortunately he has passed on, but I thought, if we can't, we have to start somewhere. And that's where my father always felt, if we have to start somewhere. So when Jackie and I came together, we just said, let's get this together. And the topics that we discussed, a lot of them resonated from what my father was fighting for over the years. And I said, well, you know what? He has passed on and he's sleeping now, but his daughter's taking that torch, and we're going to keep moving, and we're going to keep on fighting.
That's right.
And that's what that's kind of what's keeping me going, and keeping me pushing through and bringing these topics to the forefront.
You would definitely be pleased. Definitely.
Yes. You are your father's daughter, and you're carrying on the torch.
Yes.
Yes.
Big time.
Yes. And just so you know, audience, that I am seeing your questions come through, and I will make sure that they come in. And I also want to let you guys know that we do come up with topics on our own, but we are more than open to any topics that you guys want to submit to us. Any elephants that you've seen. Like I said, there's a herd of elephants out there. So any topics that you guys want to submit, there is an email to submit it to. Jackie and Melissa, you guys want to give out that email?
Go ahead, Jackie. I would have to look it on my phone.
Actually, it just changed. Right. Yeah.
You would just change. That's why I wasn't going to be the one to say it. So.
Yes. Okay, so that information, of course, and we have a website, a new website, by the way.
Not yet, Jackie.
Not yet. You want to bring that up yet?
Nope, not yet.
Our email is info@mysite.com. So that's info, info, at symbol, mysite.com. info@mysite.com. So that's our website. We can contact us and place on our comments box. We're also, of course, on Facebook and YouTube, which you're streaming on now.
Yes.
With the comments and the questions and suggestions there.
Awesome. And we'll make sure we put that in our chat and everything later. So one question I have, and this is a question for anybody can answer this. So these elephants that grow, they grow to as big as they are because there's a definite code of silence in the church. Mm-hmm. Now, why is there a code of silence in the church? What do you guys think causes that? Anybody can answer.
Culture. There's a certain perceived culture that's it's fictional. It's make believe, and so you don't want anything to come in that would burst that bubble of it being perfect.
Yeah, I agree.
And we live in a society where, especially the African American church, it seems like some of the churches already have such a negative stigma on them anyway from the outside, and so when things are happening internally, we want to try to kind of keep that hush hush, to not add to someone's negative connotation about the church anyway. But at the end of the day, the people in the church are the same ones you work with, the same ones you go to the store with, the same ones you go to school with. And so it's really dealing with people. And the issues that we're deal with the people and the mental aspect, the psychological, everything that goes on the outside of the church goes on the inside of the church. But we want to keep a hush hush again because we don't want to look at it as a negative place. And some people will use that as an excuse to not come to church anyway. Like, that's going on. See, that's why I don't go to church. Mm-hmm. And so then we want to try to keep it silent. But that silence is not going to help us. We don't have the right to remain silent.
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
That's right. Any thoughts on that, Stacy and Raymond?
I think it's because people are people. We want to put on this front that we can do anything. We're perfect. I mean, just look at social media. Social media is all about this whole concept of living your best life. And you can't live your best life every day. I mean, good grief, that's exhausting. So I think that the church doesn't talk about it because they're not ready to deal with it, or people in the church may not talk about it because they're not ready to deal with it, or because they think that it's too taboo, or they think that they're a bad person because they may have these feelings or these thoughts. And I think our concept of what Christianity or whatever your religion is not what it really is supposed to be, so
It's twisted.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to piggyback on that. I think I'm saying we, but the church, individuals in the church has a misconception of what the church is supposed to be. We think it's a place where we're supposed to be perfect. Instead of actually addressing it's a place where we're supposed to get healed. It's a place that we should run to for comfort when we're struggling with whatever, and we should feel some type of safety and security there. But we don't, because individuals, like you said, want to perpetrate that they're perfect, even though they're actually struggling with various things themselves. So until we start changing that culture around that the church is this, I've heard it before, a hospital or this actual sanctuary for safety, we're going to continue to battle these issues.
Yeah, it's in the corporate world. They say that the leader sets the culture for the company, and I put a lot of the blame on this of the leadership in church, because leaders don't give leaders are not transparent with what's ailing them. So it makes it impossible for people to be transparent around them as well. And that creates a false sense of security and a fictional environment where people are coming in, like you were saying, Tiffany, putting on their church face.
Absolutely.
And not being real. And which goes back to what you were talking about. Millennials now they're much smarter than we were at a certain age. And they can sniff out the BS faster than we can. And the moment they see that, it's like, why am I going there when everything in there is really acting phony right now?
Yeah. And it's funny you just said that, because CB, I was going to say, everyone now is about self. What am I getting from it? And that was one thing that we talked about on the millennial episode. What millennials are saying, what am I gaining from this? What are you going to give me? What am I going to get out of this? And if they don't feel like there's an award or there's anything in return, a lot of them don't come. And you can know by, even with social media, a lot of people are on views, how many hits, how many live feeds can they get? And a lot of young people are looking at that. And we've gotten away, honestly, I always go back to the foundation. We've lost a lot of that foundation and really now honestly dealing with what can I get out of it and what's my personal gain from it. And I think the church overall needs to redirect and kind of see how can we bring it back to a place of, we can all build together instead of trying to be what can I get it for out of, from myself, and I think that's a big problem that I think was causing a lot of our issues, and especially with the young people.
I think that's our fault, because millennials were born during the time of prosperity, and everyone in that part of the 80s and early 90s in the church were going to sermons to find out how they could be a millionaire. So it was all about how coming to church would make you rich. So their children heard this. And it's like, well, that's really not what faith and a relationship with God is all about. And we showed them a phony Jesus.
Wow.
And until we're ready to say to them, we lied to you, they need to hear the truth from us. Why is it hard for us to say we were wrong?
You never hear that in the church.
No.
That everybody was wrong.
It's not full transparency, and that's what I believe throws the young people away anyway. The very thing they're looking for, they're seeking, that they come into the church for, they're not going to find it, because those of us who are in the church, because we are the church, those of us who are in the church, we're not being transparent. We're not speaking out about these things, because no one wants to be, first of all, the first one to speak up and say, this is wrong. You don't want to send them and tell.
It's not popular to do that. It's not popular.
You're blackballed. Then you're going to be shunned and talked about, and then now you're going to be thrown away. And you don't think the young people are seeing this. And so when it comes time for them to be transparent about what they're going through, they're going to keep that. So they're going to deal with mental illness and or feel the effects of things that's happening in the church, but they're going to again keep the code of silence, because that's what we have. That's the climate of the church, the code of silence. Now we will say, this is a sin. This is a sin. This is a sin. Don't do this. Don't do that. We tell them all what not to do. But we don't give them anything of how to heal. If you do this, God is a forgiving God. He's a loving God. He will embrace you with whatever you're dealing with. But we're too afraid to say that. We're too afraid to have this church of just inclusion. We just always want to keep it. We're sanctified. We're separate. We don't do that. Then, and like CB said, we're lying. We're not being real. We're not being transparent. But who wants to say that? Because then we're renegades. And all of a sudden, we're someone who. Did you hear what Tiffany's saying? She's against the church. Right. We're trying to love everyone. We're trying to bring people in to Christ, not necessarily the building. And that's why, maybe this is off the point, but that's why there's a part of why I'm kind of the pandemic is here. It took us out the building. So now we're going to really deal with our spiritual lives in our homes, with our children, within ourselves, because the building is no longer available to us. So we don't have to go to the pastor, go to the ministerial board. We can deal with some things right here in our homes, and let's get real about it. Let's take off the mask and be real about it now. And that's what we need to do. And until we do that, the elephant's going to always be in the room. Yeah.
Listen, this elephant's been in the room for eons. We've been rotating elephants.
The church created social media long before there was a Facebook. If you know how the grapevine would work, and you knew that once your business was put out there, you were a pariah.
Exactly.
And, people were quick to give you, like Ray said, people are quick to give you scriptures and this, that, and the other, but faith without works is dead, and that'll kill us, but the Spirit gives life. And you can, if all you got for me is a scripture, but you can't give me any life experience and the kind of compassion and empathy I need at the moment, keep your scripture.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You have it.
TV, preach TV. Well, okay, so in the spirit of what you guys have been saying, some pretty key words with transparency and Tiffany, you mentioned being shunned, right? Because you want to speak up. So I had a question for you specifically about your episode. In your episode, you shared something very, very personal, and I appreciate that. You shared how at a very young age, at 11, you were molested by someone who was high ranking in the church, right? So, and you mentioned that sometimes now you work as a social worker with children and stuff, and you can see signs. So, and children start to act out a certain way. And even if it's not dealing with abused children or anything like that, being that the church has this code of silence, right? And what the right thing to do would be, if you see something, say something, right? But it has this code of silence, and the person who speaks up sometimes gets shunned, especially if it's somebody like, God forbid, the pastor, the minister. What do you think that there should be some type of pipeline, like how if you're at your job, you can go and somebody's sexually harassing you, you can go to your job and your HR department and you're protected, right? Do you think that there should be some type of pipeline in the church so that people can be quote unquote whistleblowers and still feel like they're not going to be shunned if they see something?
Absolutely. And the first line of defense should be your parent. But unfortunately, sometimes when you tell your parent, if they've been acclimated in the church most of their lives, then they carry the code of silence. So they're like, okay, let's deal with this, but we're going to deal with this privately. And so we don't want to put so-and-so on blast, because again, that makes them, especially if they have a higher position. Then all of a sudden, we don't want, let's just pray about it. But we don't want to say too much about it. Our parents would tell us to be quiet, because in my case, I was younger, 11. So there was no way for me to say, but I need to go to this person, that person. So I'm looking for direction right there in my own home. And so they dealt with it, I think, the best they could at that time. My parents are now deceased and been in the church all their lives at that time. But looking back on it, that thing should have been dealt with immediately and with the people who were responsible.
Yeah.
But while we're protecting them, what is it doing for me? So we're protecting positions, but what are we doing to that child who was happened to? So my life is now the trajectory of my life somewhat changed at that age, because now I'm trying to navigate through life dealing with all of these feelings and emotions that wasn't necessarily dealt with properly at that time. It wasn't until I got into my adult years that I dealt with it. But so at that time, so I'm thinking, so I speak on it now because I'm like, if this is happening with our children, there should be, first of all, the conversation should be taking place. There should be more conversations like these. It shouldn't be an elephant in the room at this point. Mm-hmm. We know these things happen. They're happening all the time, every day. Why are we still silent about it? And our children are suffering. Mm-hmm. And that's what happens. We let the children suffer. And I'm saying children because this is my situation. I was a child at the time, but it's happening to adults as well. But that people are suffering because we want to keep our mouths shut. There should be in the church a board, someone you can speak to, accountability partners. You should be able to go to them, and it should go all the way up to the high. And things should be. And do I think they should be reported to the police? Yes. Crimes happen. What do we do when crimes happen? We call the police. But again, we want to protect the perpetrator.
Mm-hmm. And they want to protect the perpetrator because a lot of times they've been done a favor. So a lot of times people at the top, they've given them a scholarship of some kind. They've helped them with some bills. They helped them get a nice job. So a lot of times people feel obligated to be silent, take the code of silence.
Right.
And what's unfortunate is that sometimes those people, they prey on the ones in the church that need the most help. The single mom who might need to have her kids get a ride to baseball practice or something like that. They help them out, bring them food, and then when something happens, they're afraid to say something.
They're afraid to say something. And let me just clarify in my position. It wasn't someone necessarily in my church. It was at a church convocation.
Okay.
So again, we're supposed to be in an element of and it comes from churches from all over. So, but still, we're around all these men and women of God. How is something dangerous going to happen?
Right.
Because again, we have this illusion that the people in the church are perfect and do no wrong. So you know what I'm saying. So, but things happen. But we still want to protect the church and protect the church's reputation. So let's keep this hush hush within our four walls, and that's what happens. Huge mistake.
And I know you mentioned, Tiffany, that you got your parents put you in counseling or after. What happened to that person? Was he prosecuted? No. That's messed up.
Yeah, because you don't know what other children that person may have also.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that I think anybody who hurts a child should be put at the bottom of the jail. And the key should be thrown away. That's unacceptable. If they're still alive, I say, do what you got to do. You know, if you need me to come and help out.
Now, I want to address something you said. I do believe that when individuals hurt other individuals, they should be brought forward. But I also think it's important that they get help themselves.
Yeah.
Because there is a deeper issue inside of them that either they're battling with or may not be aware of. And so I really believe that they should get help themselves because they need to understand why they did that and learn how to heal from that themselves. You know, hurt people. So I totally agree with those people should be brought forward, but I also believe those individuals need to get help themselves.
Yeah, I think it should be done simultaneously.
Correct. Correct.
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
An exponential problem from being afraid to be transparent and deal with the hard issues. It just keeps trickling down through the generations.
Because the first thing we want to know is, oh my God, who's going to find out? Again, we start protecting the perpetrator. So they can't really get the help they need because we're too busy protecting reputations.
Correct.
And that's the issue. They probably could get help if we confront them, sit them down from that whatever position they're having, you know, and have deeper conversations and put things in place. But that's not what happens. Unfortunately, we're too busy protecting and trying to keep it private and within the body, the church. We don't want anybody outside to know about it.
Correct.
But what's happening to the person that happened to?
Exactly. And so now that we've established that these are all humans in the church, and humans are not perfect, but for some reason there's this illusion that everything's okay when you're within the church walls. Now, I want to know from if you guys have any suggestions on how to protect people in the church, like let's say especially children. When I was a camp counselor, and I had to deal with like little kids, right? There were certain rules in place with how you dealt with children, right? So I couldn't take a kid to the bathroom by myself, right? As a camp counselor, that's just against the rules. There had to be another counselor with you, maybe another child or something. You couldn't be in a room with the child with the door closed. What rules do you think you can, and this is for, it's, Tiffany or anybody can answer, what rules do you think could be put in place to protect children, anybody in the church, from incidents like that happening?
So Tiffany, I just want to bounce off of this real quick. I think there's in a lot of these churches, they do have stipulations. If a pastor is meeting with a young child or a young adult, there's usually an elder or someone within that room. But when there becomes an issue is when that parent develops an outside personal relationship with the pastor, the elder, or that member, and they start going on church trips. They start, picking up the child for whatever practice or whatever. And then that's how the vulnerability actually develops. It's not that, like, 'cause, when you go to a doctor, for women's doctors, when we go, we always have the nurse in there with us. We don't have just the doctor by ourselves. So I think it doesn't really directly start, they have things in place in these churches now. They have the pastor, they have the elder, or some form of someone in leadership when they're meeting with anyone, young person, adult. But it's that vulnerability rolls in when that outside person comes in and says, hey, they start building that outside relationship. And then those things start to develop from there. So that really falls on what's going on personally. What is that person that is I can say just not fully together and trying to hunt out the weak. Like we said in our episode, they're hunting out the weak, the single parent, the single mother or father that's in need or knows that they're broken and they need that help. So I think that's a big piece of this process and what's really going on.
It's the community, what you're saying. It's not the building, it's not the institution, but it's the community.
Yes.
For example, when I was the elder of a church in Manhattan, one of the older women befriended one of the single mothers. And so she decided that she would babysit for her while she was at work. But then her teenage son started molesting the baby. And that became a huge, and this went on for I don't know how long before it was brought to our attention. And at the time, our leadership did not want to make it public. I think that was a problem. Secrets. We can't keep these secrets. Why are there so many secrets among people who are supposed to be living in the light?
Because they're suffering in silence. But like you said, there should be some accountability in the church. But then you have a case where you may have a woman who's a minister, and she's taking out maybe a young man in the church. Now we won't look at that as with the side eye, but things can happen that way as well. We just become so trusting because, like I said in my thing, while we are praying, praying, someone else is praying, preying, and so they are cultivating this climate, and at the right time, that prey will jump on you. After they've gained trust with the parent, after they've gained some kind of trust with that child, it doesn't start off right away. They'll start grooming them. And then of course they may start helping the parents out. Well, you're in need. Let me help you do this. Let me help you do that. And so now they're trusting. So of course you say, here, take my child. We're handing them over because we're getting something in return. But and then some things it happens and we will miss it. Because you do trust people at some point in time. But I'm saying that there are times when someone is a serial perpetrator, and the church know what's going on. They know this person has an issue, but we won't do anything about that because of whatever position they hold. And let's look at their tithes and offering.
Mm-hmm.
That's another thing. But these
a lot
are
of
real.
times, oh, excuse me, Tiffany. A lot of times I think it comes from fear. Also, people are fearful of being left out and fearful of not being popular anymore, not being included in the clique of the community that's popular, the social status of the church. So a lot of times people actually probably don't really care that their child, that their loved one is being molested.
Ooh.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, that's what it shows. So in the meantime, you have a whole cycle of children growing up, being neglected, they're being messed up, they're not taken care of, and then it kind of repeats itself. We see it. We see it all the time, unfortunately. So what do we do with that? What do we do with that?
I would hope that as parents, we have these hard conversations with our children, and so that they don't think that everybody's perfect.
Yeah.
I used to work for an after-school program in Manhattan during the time that Bill Clinton was president. And you remember the Monica Lewinsky episode where he said he made it plain that what happened between him and Monica was not sex. Well, the next few months, the children started doing that on the yellow bus on the way to school.
Wow.
Because they said it wasn't sex. Because the president said it wasn't sex. So the parents, and I don't mean to be mean, our little angels need to hear the facts from us.
True.
So that if anyone would want to even try that, they go, and they can handle it.
And that's good too, because we live in a society now and we've been living in one, but especially now where we have to start teaching our children signs and hear certain words. We have to start training them very early, things to look for. And then we'll do that when we go into a Walmart center. If somebody comes near you, you scream. You don't speak to strangers. But that same mentality should also be the same for any arena we go into, to include the church. We have to start teaching and training our children signs and when to speak up, and then make a climate that makes it easy for them to come to us. Because like our parents don't want to hear about it.
Yes.
They think they start questioning the child. Well, are you sure? You don't want to say anything about Pastor so and so if it's not true, and they're trying to tell you. So we have to start teaching them, and as parents, we have to listen and hear. And we too need to have some. And if we don't know, that's fine. Let's get some training on that. There should be some training in the church. That's the signs to look for. If your child starts acting this way, bring in more professionals in the church. To start talking to our parents. We'll do it for financial. We'll say how to budget, how to do finances in the church. Let's bring in some professionals, some therapists.
And all the therapists don't have to have Christian tacked onto their.
Absolutely. Some real. I mean, some bona fide, trained, educated, for real. From an accredited school.
Yeah.
Training.
I feel you on that one. No.
Yeah.
I think that this conversation leads me to think about, our people's intentions. Some people's intentions aren't always bad, but what they do, the consequences of what they do may be more harmful than they realize. You know what I mean? So my father-in-law was talking to me the other day, and he was like, sometimes people are like, well, I don't intend to do that. It wasn't my intent to do this or my intent to do that. But you have to think about what was the consequence of what you did on that other person. And, there are people who can't think like that. So like you all are saying, it's like, you've got to really, it's sad that you have to do that, but you have to prepare your children for that. You protect them, you teach them how to cross the street, you teach them how to look both ways. You teach them how to do all of that other stuff. You really do need to be teaching them about, okay, your safe space, your safe zone. If you are not comfortable, what do you do?
That's right.
And people don't want to have to think about doing that in the church, because your church is supposed to be your safe space. They're supposed to be your family. But you got to look out for some family too, because everybody has gone through something.
Mhm.
And you don't know what some folks have gone through and the pain that they can put on somebody else because they haven't dealt with that.
Mhm.
And definitely continue with that, Dr. Stacy, for sure. I think parents need to take more action on building up their children, because when you build up your esteem, your self-esteem, your self-worth, there's little chance of being taken advantage of in a lot of situations. The chances are more slimmer.
Yeah.
Because that's the whole point of being preyed upon. Bullies pick on who? Who do bullies pick on?
They
People
pick
who are
on
what? Right.
who they
So
perceive as weak. Yeah.
it's the same thing in the community. I mean, a prayer see someone who is down and out, low.
Yeah.
They're just not, together. They don't have it together. So they're going to go ahead and take full advantage of that situation and be vulnerable, take advantage of it and violate that person.
Yeah. So I had a question here, and this goes to to Stacy. It's pretty much about our millennials episode. Well, it's Stacy, and then to the room as well. So as a millennial myself, I know that our generation we're the connected generation, right? We are on social media. We grew up with the internet. We have friends from all different types of things, all different types of religions. We're the generation where it's not okay to make fun of somebody for being gay or somebody for being different. But we're one of the more open-minded generations, right? Us and even Gen Z, like my little cousin.
Oh my goodness.
Like
They're on another level.
I'm still getting used to the whole pronouns and stuff myself. So now I feel old. So now, being that we're so open-minded, I think one of the things that turns millennials away from the church is that they are not, as the church is known as not being open-minded, but the church does still have certain principles that they need to go by, because that's just what's in the Bible and everything. So how could the church be open-minded and still stick to the values that they want to preach?
I don't have a good answer for that. I'm gonna tell you what my father-in-law always says, and what I think about as a follower of Christ. He always says, I'm not a Christian, I'm a follower of Christ. Mm-hmm. What would Jesus do? Would Jesus be sitting up here saying, I don't mess with you because, you're not this particular denomination, or you don't do whatever? No, you embrace everybody despite their differences, because in the end, the goal is the same. I think the other piece of it is, I think that you have to meet people where they are. And, the church has been preaching this for forever. You know what I mean? But I think culturally, especially if you think about the Black church and that kind of thing, it's supposed to be a place where you all can be, highfalutin and all of that. So you have to have these standards. And I really don't have the answer. I think that the church needs to understand that their work is about people, and people change, culture changes. And I think that the word of God can work within that. I feel like people pick and choose different things to fit their social idea or concept of what should be. I mean, slave owners use the Bible to, say that slavery was all right. Like, this is what we're supposed to do. God meant for you to be slaves. So you can use anything to convince you or to kind of prove your point. I think that the church needs to invest in people and the needs of people. And I think millennials are doing it. I think that Gen Zers are doing it. They're looking at people for who they are, not what they look like, not, where they work, what pronouns they want to use. They don't care about all of that. They're looking at the person. And I think that if the church wants to be viable or wants their message to continue, we're gonna have to somehow change. And I don't know what that looks like. I honestly don't. I have no clue.
I can somewhat speak on that since I work on a college campus. I think the most important part is allowing the young people to understand their identity in Christ. We can preach about what we should and shouldn't do and everything, but I think it's so important that they understand their identity in Christ. God has given everybody gifts and talents, and I think you need to encourage those young people to develop those talents, to develop those gifts, and you'll be so surprised how creative out of the box that they are. One thing I try to talk to some of my students about is I look at creation. Man, if you watch nature shows, you'll be surprised at some of the things that God created. And you can say God is out the box. He just wasn't just in this one particular area. And so helping young people to understand their identity in Christ, encourage them to use their gifts and their talents, explore their gifts and their talents. I think that's one way how you can get them connected in the church and being a champion for them. I think a lot of times young people or the millennials or Gen Z, and I don't know what's going to come after that, they see roles on a very small scale. Like either you're going to be a pastor, or you're going to be a Sabbath school or Sunday school teacher, or you can usher, or you can sing on the praise team. But what are other ways that they can show their gifts and talents outside? No, people are poets, talented poets. How many times have you seen a poet get up in church and tell a poem? You haven't seen a lot. You have people who are painters. How many times have you seen someone display their art from how they love God from that? So I really think it's allowing them to establish their identity, help them to understand who they are in Christ, and allow them to show their talents, allow them to explore what God has given them. And I think that's a way to connect with them.
And I think that means that the church isn't going to look like it looked like for us or for our parents' generation or the generation before that. And I think that may be part of the issue. Like, we want things to stay the same. Nobody likes change. And if, this happens, which I think is a great thing, the church isn't going to look like the same church that your grandmama had. It's just not. And I think that the church should be prepared for change.
It has to be. If something doesn't move on to the next generation, it can't survive. So they're going to have to do what they have to do to get the millennials, to get the Gen Zers to want to come in, or it's going to die off with the generation that refuses to change. It's like if you don't have a kid, then your family line is over, right? So you got to embrace the next generation, whatever that might be.
Right. Well, I think it's important to introduce our children to Christ, but what we can't do is then control how that relationship is cultivated. Now, I think a lot of times growing up, they introduce us to Christ, and then they try to control what that relationship looked like. And here's how it should look if you're saved, and Holy Ghost feel. Here's what should be going on. Here's how that should look. And that's how we've grown up. So there was a lot of do's and don'ts, and what we can't do, all that other stuff. And so now we have to do with our children, introduce them to Christ, of course, but then let them cultivate that relationship on their own. And we can be there as a guide. And that's what the church also should be there, as a guide. But we can't tell them what that relationship is going to look like.
Yeah, I think we've forgotten what discipleship means.
Absolutely.
Discipleship doesn't come from the word to discipline. Discipleship comes from the Greek word to walk beside. And so Jesus didn't have any, he didn't tell Peter or any of the other 11 disciples to say the sinner's prayer before he allowed them to walk beside him. And he didn't tear down everything he saw negative about them or that he didn't agree with about them before he allowed them to walk beside him. It was from them walking beside and seeing him in a transparent way that they realized who he was.
Absolutely.
And so we're afraid to let people walk beside us and see the real us. So instead, we tell them to say this prayer, and then we start telling them, don't do this and don't do that, and don't say this and don't say that, and you can't be this and you can't be that. Well, that's not discipleship. That's judgmental.
That's control.
That's control.
It can be a form of control.
We can make disciples, but we're afraid for someone to see who I really am, to walk beside me without me trying to fix them first.
Exactly. You know, even growing up, there were times when, you know, we heard the missionaries, you know, they had to wear, in my church anyway, Pentecostal holiness, they wore the long skirts and top shirts, top, you know, all the way to the top, button up, no jewelry, no makeup, and all that other stuff. And then the missionaries, they were the ones who just were angels. I just thought they were just perfect. And so, you know, because they tell us what the Bible says not to do, you know, how they teaching and preaching to us. So of course, when I messed up, you know, when I so-called with sin or whatever, I just thought I was doomed to hell. There could be no way I'm going to make it to heaven. God don't love me, anything. And then as I got older, I realized that some of those same missionaries, they sinned at some point because they weren't perfect. But the problem is they didn't tell you that. They didn't tell you, you know, when I messed up, God forgave me. So, you know, you're not doomed to hell. You'll be okay. You ask for forgiveness. They didn't share their experiences. So again, that goes back to the transparency.
Yes.
And so, of course, when you do something and you're taught like that and you end up messing up, you feel like that's it, your life is over. You know, so it's so much structure and so strenuous. You almost feel like, well, shoot, I'm not qualified to serve God because we would never be perfect. We'll you know, as the Bible says, man falls 7 times, but he gets back up again. You know, we're susceptible to fall at some point in sin, but God is a forgiving God. He's a redeemer. You know, he still loves us even in our mess. You know, we're all sinners saved by grace, but we need to share that. And I'm not saying we have to tell everybody everything we've done wrong. You don't have to go through that, but you can still begin to preach the message of God is a loving God. He's a just God. And the more you serve him, you'll cultivate your own relationship and you will have that discernment. And you'll know that inner thing about what, you know, how to guide your life according to your relationship with Christ, as opposed to someone constantly throwing it down your throat.
I know.
Let's not throw them away. They're not going to want to come.
I'm sorry, Tiffany, cut you off. But I know growing up, and I think Stacy and Jackie can a little vouch for this. In our generation, we had a lot of individuals that really supported us and pushed us, and really gave us that hope and saying, you can do it. And even if we failed or we didn't have that confidence, they were right by our sides and just pushing us and pushing us and pushing us. And I think that's really where the gap has come. We are the next generation to push the young people. And I think we're just so tired and broken ourselves. Like, do we even have possibly the energy to sometimes help the millennials get to where they are? Because I know our generation, we have individuals I know that pushed us. I remember growing up, Jackie and Stacey, y'all remember, we had someone in our church, she expected that we could sing. She wanted us to sing, and she tried to push us to sing and have this little group together. And I personally felt like, I'm like, are we really doing this? But she, you know, taught us how to harmonize and come together, and we sang our hearts out. She was standing in the balcony, and we were singing our hearts out. But, you know, you had that person that was pushing us and saying, you guys can do it. And I don't think some of these young people don't really have that support that I know I had when I was growing up. I think we're kind of falling off. I think we expect the kids to know it already, or have that expectation to say, okay, because they're so quick to learn, they should already know, you know? So I don't know if that could be possibly the problem too.
I think in many ways the church adopted this capitalistic culture where it's all about me. When I say all about me, every individual is all about them. And that's not the culture of Jesus. That's not the culture of what the church is. We're built on the foundation of the apostles and the prophets. In other words, we're standing on their shoulders and the things they did to prop us up. So who are we propping up? It's not all about me. It's about me getting to the place where I can push somebody else up. And I have to see millennials or the children or whoever, not as what's wrong with them, as what gift they are, so I can push them up.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm focusing on their gift, I'm not going to be, their sin is not going to be my issue, because that's for God to take care of, not me.
Mm-hmm.
And in the era of social media, they're exposed to so many different things.
Yes.
They're exposed to even different religions. And a lot of times we're not even able to even tell them why are we part of the denomination we're a part of. You know, if I say I'm Pentecostal, my daughter may ask, why are you Pentecostal? Because my mama was, my grandmother was, without really being able to explain them. Well, why do I serve the way why is my relationship the way it is? You know, we explain that, because now millennials and Generation Z, they're asking questions.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
They want to know why. Well, why? You know, but why do I have to do it this way? Because sometimes we put God in a box. Many of us have put God in a box because we've raised that way.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Exactly.
I'm Pentecostal, born and bred. I was raised apostolic. That's it. You know, so when my child comes and say, well, what about the Muslims? Do they love God? You know, a different religion. It's like, oh, okay. Let me go research. Let me get back to you, because a lot of times I don't have the answers. Oh, well, that's a good question. Let me go read something real quick, because we're not prepared. They want answers.
But that's how we raise them. That's how we raise them.
Yeah.
And I think each generation gives their, progeny this opportunity to learn more. I mean, I feel like if we think about our concept of religion and spirituality from like a cultural standpoint, maybe, it's like do as I say, not as I do, was done because of how we, our ancestors were slaves. There's no thinking. What do you mean? What do you mean we're going to go do something else? We're going to go somewhere else. There was none of that.
Right.
And, I feel like our generation, what are they? Z and millennials are a reflection of the generations before. They're not going to be like a complete copy, but they're like a reflection of like, you're good, you're bad, you're ugly. And it's their job to push, it's their job to ask these questions. Like my kids know people from all kinds of religions that I was like, wait, no, I know folks who are Muslim, Pentecostal, I know all of that, but they know people who are Buddhist and Hindu and agnostic. And it's great. It's great. They see God in every last one of those different denominations or religions. And I think that their concept of God is bigger than mine actually was, quite honestly, because of that exposure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So.
Yep. I had a question for CB, because you mentioned something just now about people in the church trying to fix people, right? Or telling them what they can and can't do. And on your episode, there was actually another guest who talked about when he was young, he started to feel, feelings of like he was attracted to another man and stuff. And he went to one of his pastors and told him about it. And he basically shut him down and was like, you can't do that, and, he had to hide how he was feeling, and they told him he needed to fix that and, do what he had to do to get on the quote unquote right path. Right. So in terms of that, how do we help people feel welcome in the church and not feel like they're going to be shunned or that they needed to be fixed? And also, I know you had an experience too, where when you went into the church with a person you were in a relationship with, you were told that you had to break up with them. So how did you reconcile that, and how did you come back into the church? Because I know you're kind of active in the church now. So I know those were a few questions, but
you want to tell all my business? No, okay.
Okay, now.
Listen, you put it out there in the witness.
Tiffany, do how? I'll circle back to Jesus told a crowd, the kingdom of God is within you. It's already there. I don't have to go through these seances of all night prayer, whatever you want me to do, to get the kingdom of God is already in me. Our job is to help them get it out. It really is. Because whatever God has put in there is a purpose for the world. And if we see everyone as being intricate to the purpose of this world, they will be more valuable to us, and it won't matter what they come to us looking like. As far as finding peace for yourself of who you are, it's taken me. Well, we're still working on that.
God's not done with you yet.
The Catholic Pope just said that he was going to do gay marriages. And I thought, wow, so after all these centuries of you guys in there doing what you want to do, you're finally going to tell the truth. And that's not just because people are going to pounce. That's, they're going to look at a sexual thing, a sexual act or sexual preference. They call it a preference. But it's not a preference for everybody. And that's something they can't get out of their heads, is that everybody doesn't choose to be heterosexual. Everybody doesn't choose to be this or that. They are built that way. They were formed that way. They were made that way. And so there has to be some place where the church finds a way to identify with them and help them find their place. Now, so do we tell people that are different, God wants you to be alone and miserable for the rest of your life if you want to be holy? That's your plight. I don't know. I have a hard time accepting that as a definition of the God that I know. For years, I hated myself. But God kept speaking to me, giving me revelation, and giving me things to do. I was constantly doing things to promote the church. And I'm like, well, if I don't even like myself, God, why do you keep using me? So,
wow.
This is a long conversation, but we're going to have to reevaluate the way we consider who's worthy. We're going to have to reevaluate how we cast sin. Because I didn't know that hell had different places for different things. We're going to have to reevaluate what we call unconditional love. Everybody's going to throw those Levitical scriptures at me, and they're going to throw, that first chapter of Romans at me. Perfect, go right ahead. But the letter killeth, but the spirit gives life. And if God continues to give life to something that you consider blasphemous, then who's messing up? The toxic masculinity that is a part of being a Christian as a man has destroyed our church in America. Because that is what voted for Donald Trump. That is what hates the Black Lives Matter movement. That is what does not see life that is not in your same ideology as worth being killed or dying. So, love covers a multitude of sin. And if we would teach people their self-worth, then we wouldn't have to worry about promiscuity, because they would love themselves too much to be promiscuous.
Wow.
And then God would take care of that need. But we don't love ourselves enough to tell them to love themselves like that.
Wow.
So the issue, you said hurt people. there's 66 or some people say 70 books of the Bible are hurt people hurting people. And when do we get to the place because the evolution of the church when we stop doing that? So all I can say is that the insecurities that we have make it hard for us to love people who are different. The fears that we have make it hard for us to love people who are different. I want to be popular. I want to make sure I'm holy. You can't make me holy.
Oh,
Wow.
that's right. Where's that organ? Man, it's preaching.
I don't
Right?
care what you try to. You can't make me holy.
Mm-hmm.
That's between me and God.
Yes.
That's like somebody saying, "Now you can get married, but let me give you a list of things that y'all can't do when you by yourself in bed."
Not gonna fly.
You don't try. and this is a little too hard for most people to deal with. But like you were talking about millennials, it's not too hard for them to deal with because their brains have not been closed and locked from the possibility of more, of different. And so, you know, the church is not a institution. We were talking about protecting. We protect the institutions at the expense of the individual.
Absolutely.
It should be different. It should be the other way around.
Absolutely.
The individual is so much more important than some archaic institution.
Absolutely.
So for me, I refuse. I'm talking too long. I'll say one more story. I was pastoring a church in Jersey City, and there was a young man who would come in every now and then disappear, but he wouldn't participate in anything. And then a friend of mine was pastoring a church on Christopher Street in the middle of the West Village in Manhattan, and he invited me to a concert. I went to the concert. He was the pastor, and I looked to the side, and there was the young man from the neighborhood that I had a church in, sitting in the concert with his boyfriend in the church, loving church service. And I saw him, and he saw me, and he freaked out, got up, and left. And I went, "Oh my God, did I do that? Did I just run this young man out of church?" Because of the fear, he thought that I would say or expose or do something to hurt him because I saw him happy. May God, if that's what I represent, that is not right.
Fair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think in that with that subject matter, far as especially culturally in our church, we have a long ways to go, because in most churches, Black churches, of course, will say what sin is. And so if you come in, and I'm talking about homosexuality, and we'll say that it's a sin, how can we then embrace someone who's in that lifestyle and then love them and let them operate in the church openly? And it's a difficult thing, and I'm just being really open. Like I said, elephant in the room. I think the churches don't know how to do that, because we've been taught from birth up to that's a sin, that is wrong. And so if you're in the church and God is in you, and the closer you get to Christ, that's something you need to be delivered from. And at the same time, we're telling someone to be delivered from something that someone else is saying, this is how God made me. So now there's a battle, and we're battling. Is it sin? Let's establish that. Is it okay? And then who's in position to say whether it is or isn't? Because like you said, we'll use the scriptures to say that it is a sin. So we've come up on a very difficult subject, but it's something that people are battling in the church all the time.
And Tiffany,
But you have so many people who will get married because they think it's the right thing to do. This is what I'm supposed to do. And I can't say that I'm having this issue because it's not right. I've been told it's sin. So let me marry a young lady or a young man, whatever, and try to live this life. But you're still dealing with that inner man, that inner struggle. And then you start dealing with that behind closed doors. Then we have the word down low, brothers, because the church, we're not addressing it openly. And I'm just being very realistic about it. And things are going on. And so what is the church position? And then we ask ourselves on the panels, how do we feel about it? We all have a relationship with Christ. Where are we with it, with that particular subject? Or do we address it? Because that's what this is all for. That's what this panel is about. The elephant in the room. We're talking about it. We're bringing it to the forefront. And we're being transparent. And so how can we even begin to tell others about it? We're not quite sure where we are with it.
I'm sorry, Tiffany, to cut you off, but we have to address this. The reason we have to address it, because no matter what, everyone is still a child of God. And I don't feel like we have the place to make any decision on anybody's lifestyle or whatever they choose. Like I said on that episode we had, it's here. The LGBT community is here.
You say.
Now, what does I look at it personally and saying, what does God want me to do to be that vessel, to be that example, to be that person, to be able to be that really the example, instead of turning the other cheek and walking away and making the person feel less than. That is not my place, because at that point, that's basically saying that's what God is doing to them, and that's not what God is doing, because we're still a child of God, and that is not our. I talked like this when I was on the episode. Jackie had to calm me down because I was so about this, because where in the world do we ever get an opportunity to place judgment? Because you don't understand. This might be our test.
Exactly.
This might be our test.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And are we utilizing the test that God is giving us and being the true example He wants us to be?
No, because we're judging.
Mm-hmm.
Remember the hierarchies of sin. There's, the different levels of sin. Marie already stated that.
Categorized.
This is other thing
Homosexuality is way up here,
Absolutely.
This is other element that when most of us say church, we mean the cultural expression that we know.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Now, evangelicals make up a large part of the American population as far as church goes, but they only make up about 4% of the church population worldwide.
Mm-hmm.
4%. And you have your Catholics, your Lutherans, and your Episcopals who are now having these conversations about the LGBTQ community and embracing them and helping them find ways to walk with God as who they are.
That's who they are. Right.
So let me ask you this.
So that means that the larger part of the church, hear me please, the larger number of the church is not thinking that this is an issue that you need to you're going to deliver. How are you going to deliver me out of me?
Right.
So, CB, do you think that this is a feature of the church understanding, or the church as a business, where they're like, well, if we don't, minister to these folks that we need to minister to, we're gonna fall away. We're not gonna be able to survive. Or do you think that it is a true understanding of God doesn't care about any of that? He just cares about who we are.
I think it's the latter. I think that we are missing the big picture. Look, Eli's sons were pilfering. They were stealing money from the people that were giving to the congregation. And God came to Samuel and gave him the edict. I'm going to kill the sons and the father because of this sin. how many churches just pilfer for a living? But we ain't saying that they need to die. They be delivered from that. I can, don't get me started, because I was allowed to walk in a certain area of what's considered the celebrity part of the first 1% of the Christian world in America. Do you know how many of those people are affronting? They are not trying to live a Christian life. Once the service is over and they go back to the back room. I left a denomination that I was working with because one of the leaders had been sleeping with his secretary for 20 years and refused to marry her. And I'm like, can we talk? Here. How many of these people who want to tell you you need to be delivered from this will use your talents?
That's right.
Absolutely.
Don't get me started. I would call names.
Yeah, don't put them out there. See,
No name dropping today.
But again, to go back, I think we're missing the big picture. And the big picture is that it is the heart and soul of that individual that is more important than their sexual, not preference, connotation, how they were born. If it's all about sex, the world is already overpopulated. We don't really need that many more people.
So, CB, I have something to say on this, and I'm not going to say any names, but I have someone that I grew up with, and their child decided to make a lifestyle to be from a young lady into a man, and I looked at it first very like, what's going on? Why is this happening? But when I look back at this individual's life and what they went through, they saw more love in a woman than they did see in a man, because they saw how their father was treating their mother. And I think she felt more of that love from a woman and felt that security from that woman and felt that love for the woman than she did a man. So what do you think on that perspective? What is your outlook on that?
That goes into the psychology of someone's, and I can't really speak on someone's psychology or the trauma of the psychology that may lead someone to do something. But I will say this. Children are born all over the world with more than one sexual organ, and we don't deal with that. And it can be, you can call it a birth defect. Something went wrong in the uterus with the Y and the X chromosomes, and we don't know why this child has more of this or less of that. But when you consider the number of people that have been born now, there are more people on the planet than have lived in the history of mankind, living right now on the planet. And with those X and Y chromosomes coming at this enormous rate, people have in them, in innate nature, both male and female. And unfortunately, everybody wasn't born with the X chromosome dominating like it's supposed to, or the Y chromosome dominating exactly the way it's supposed to. And there's some mixed up chromosomes walking around here on the face of the earth. And these poor people are having to deal with that internally. And what does not work for them is to say, well, you better choose what you look like to me. Because that's not working. In fact, it never did work, because that's why we have so much child molestation going on. That's why we have, it's not working. So if we can't deal with the fact that everything isn't perfect, and that God didn't make a mistake by allowing us to have these, there's this woman who's a racer from Africa, and I can't say her name, forgive me. And nobody can beat her running. So they ran a blood test and found out, you know what I'm talking about?
Yep.
That she has more male chromosomes than she does female chromosomes in her body, which causes her muscles to grow like a man's muscle.
They try to qualify.
So they disqualified her from being in the Olympics.
Yep.
And said that after we looked at your blood, you are more man than woman. So unless you take some estrogen shot, you can't run no more.
Wow.
So what do you do if it's, I'm not running a race, but that's what's going on in that person's body. And that's not sin. I don't care what anybody wants to call it. That's who they are. That's what was created in the womb. And that's different. It's special. You can call it whatever you want, but you're afraid to deal with that because it doesn't fit the box. And you can't deliver that out of them because that's how they were born.
Yeah.
That's like saying like someone who is disabled is sinning. That's how they were. That's how God made them.
Exactly. Well, okay. So I had a question it's a very important line that you said, CB. So important that I have put it in the promo. And and so this is for you, but for everybody. You said something very, very important, and it's something that's been said to me too, because it's the reason that I kind of stopped going to church for a while, which is covered in a future episode. I actually haven't been back.
We had a conversation about why you.
We had a conversation. Tune in for a future episode. But you said something that struck me, and this is what people tell me all the time. People run away from the church because of what people do. Whether it's with your case, or where they judge you for who you are, or they or in like Tiffany's case where something happens to her, or like in my case where I felt let down by the church because of things that in my time of need, I felt like the church wasn't in my family's time of need. A little preview, like when my father passed and the church was not there for my family, when we had been in the church our whole life, So you said people leave the church because of what people do, but how do you, and this is a question for the room, how do you separate the two? How do you still want to be a part of the church or want to be a Christian when you've been let down by the people in the church?
I have a personal relationship with my father. I don't, and I'm not saying this to gloat or brag or anything. I don't I don't leave the house without spending time with God. I don't care what my schedule is that day. If I have to get up at 3:30 in the morning to spend time first, I do that. I pray, I read, I meditate. I've kept a journal since the 80s of the things God has told me and said for me to do. And so when I am bombarded by stuff that comes at me from people, I can go back and talk to my father about what's happening. And he has sustained me. He has given me, when I say live by faith, when I left a ministry that I had worked in for 25 years, they did everything they could to blacklist me, to keep me from being able to get money. And I didn't leave because I was gay. I left them because the pastor had lost their mind. And so the pastor called all the people. I had 3 jobs because I was working with entrepreneurs in the church, and the pastor made sure each person fired me so that I could have no income. So I had to live by faith. And God, and so if you see, that's what it is. We need to teach our children, the people that God sends us to disciple, that it's not about me. If you can have a personal relationship with God for yourself, it will never matter what people do.
Right.
It will never matter what people say. You don't ever need to be popular. You don't care what social media is. Not real life. It's just social media. If you can't afford to, if you can't take getting dragged, get off Twitter. It don't mean nothing. So, but if you know who he is, and and I say he or she, because I don't mean to put that out there that way. But if you know who God is for yourself, and you get that relationship, and you can hear from God, then it won't matter who comes for you. And that's what is missing.
Well, then in that case, if you can have a personal relationship with God, right? And this is just to play, well, devil's advocate, because we don't like the devil, but to play the advocate of the other side, if you can have a personal relationship with God, do you need the church, though? Like, can you just have that relationship?
Yes, I need, and when I say the church are members. So there are people in the church that I can tell my crazy self to, and no matter how out there I am, they don't say, well, okay, well, I can't talk to you no more because you're the devil. They'll say, okay, can we discuss that? Because I'm not feeling that way. I have a friend on here who signed on, Pastor John Cavazos. He's known me for 35 years, and I will call him and say the craziest stuff, and he'll say, well, I'm not there yet. He's well, I'm not there yet, but we can talk about that. But I don't feel judged. I don't feel like I'll get thrown out because I wasn't perfect that day. And so the whole thing about the church is being connected and holding each other up, not judging each other, holding each other up. And so I need the church, and I hope that I offer something to the church.
Yeah.
But we are the church. Again, I'll say it 100 times. It's not an institution. It's not your little bitty denomination. It's not your black culture, your indigenous culture, your Asian culture. The church is the body of Christ. We are members, and we all have different functions, but we all need each other. And so we need each other. So there's no time for infighting or being political, because most of the issues of church is who wants to be in control and who wants to have the last word.
Exactly.
I don't have to have the last word. I don't care. As long as you love me.
Yes.
I want to piggyback on that. I think a lot of times we put our hope in people and not in God. So we get disappointed when we are expecting some things from people instead of expecting it from God. I even look at Jesus' life when he went to the garden to pray. What happened to the disciples? The very people who he depended on, they were asleep. But Jesus did not still give up on them, because we see what they did afterwards. But I think the important things is that we need to keep our hope in God and not just on a group of people, or we need to look at them as people. I have issues. They have issues. We all have issues. No one is walking around perfect. So I think God will place the right people who needs to be in your life during that certain time, but we have to put our hope and trust in him.
Yeah.
Awesome. So Raymond, nice that you were the last to speak, because I got some questions for you next. I know we were kind of getting a little short on time, but this is a very important topic on mental illness. One of the things that people go to your pastors for counseling, right? You go to them because you believe they have the answers. But one of the topics that you talked about in church is that sometimes if you're going through something like maybe a mental health crisis, or you're dealing with depression or anything like that, you reach out to people in the church, but they might not necessarily be equipped to deal with some of the things that you might be bringing to them. Do you think if you're someone in that type of position in the church, should you have formal like mental health training? Should you be certified so that you can answer those type of questions?
I do encourage that.
Mm-hmm.
However, I do believe God has given other people capability to do those type of things. I think we try to put so much on our pastor. They should do everything, and understand that they may not have the capability to do everything. But I believe there are church members who are capable of doing it. I do believe there's some type of training and understanding that pastors should have. So if they have to address something, either they will be able to know who to turn to, or they will have a better understanding of what that person is going through. But I don't necessarily think all pastors have the capability to help someone go through or guide through those issues. But I do believe it's important that pastors get some type of education on mental health. And I know a lot of times we use mental illness, but it has such a negative connotation. So I like to use the word mental health because health is what it is. We're trying to be healthy. But yes.
And how do we separate, in the old days or so, or maybe even quite recently, they would think that mental health is a spiritual issue, that there might be a demon inside you or something if you're dealing with mental health. How do we reduce that stigma and separate mental health from spiritual issues?
Wow, that's a good question. I think sometimes people think that when they go through mental health challenges, that they automatically think that their spiritual life is in shambles, and not understanding that you could be strong with God and still have other challenges that you go through, whether it's anxiety, depression, whatever it may be. But I think we need to start letting individuals know that, yes, God is someone who we turn to when we go through those stages, when we go through those challenges, but we can also receive help from that through other individuals. We need to I think we need to stop putting the stigma of mental health being something demonic and helping individuals know that's something that we naturally go through. And it's okay to acknowledge it, but it's even more okay to receive some type of help with it, to get the help, to go through someone who's a professional to help you through that. And I don't think we do that enough in the church, but it's something I think we need to start dealing with, because so many people go through issues and we're not addressing those issues. We're looking down at them. Or, oh, that person is crazy. No, that person's going through depression. They're going through a lot right now. And, we need to reach out to see how we can help them.
Exactly. And to the audience, in about 5 minutes, I'm going to open it up to audience questions. So you guys can feel free to put your questions in the chat. I had a question for the group. One of the things that we talk about is, especially the bigger the church is, that's the more people that we have in there. So Raymond, like how you were saying, maybe the pastor might not be equipped to deal with certain issues, right? The pastor isn't perfect. Nobody is. But the bigger the congregation is, the more professionals they have in there. So there might be therapists sitting in the congregation that are not being used, right? That could be of help. What do you guys think? What are some different, I guess you would call them like ministries or things that you would say that we need to have set up in the church that could utilize some of the people that we have sitting in the congregation to help with some of these issues that we've been talking about? This is open to anybody. What would you suggest would be some things that the church can put in place?
Well, I think a lot of times, when you go to a job and you fill out the application, you see what a person's strengths are, you see what their education background. I think it would be very good for churches to start polling their church members. What are your strengths? What are your expertise in those areas? That way you can start pulling together so they can be better useful for the church in those expertise that they hold.
Very nice.
That's good suggestion. I actually went to a church one time. They had some form of a talent. What was your natural born talent seminar? And I thought it was interesting. Everybody's kind of like a personality test. And once everybody took that, they saw where their strengths are in their ministry, whatever it is. So some people were excellent communicators. Some were excellent givers. So everybody was pretty much so given or shown after taking this test what their strengths were in the community of the church. The issue that I found with that was it was never really utilized after they took the test. It was just kind of like someone came in and did their doctoral presentation, kind of dropped it. So with that type of test or support, I think churches and communities would benefit from having people realize what their natural born talents are and to go ahead and strengthen them and see, take surveys and see what wouldn't mind using that talent to help the community and their church.
Very
So you
nice.
provide a lot of social workers and psychologists, a lot of counselors are just sitting there. They may not be wanting to work in the community because they do that all day, every day at work. So by the time they get to church, they're like, oh, I don't feel like doing that right now, but is this necessary for those who are willing?
Exactly.
Or they can just be a referral source. You know what I mean? I mean, there's so many people who do this, who I feel are called by God to get the training to do this. So it may be that the person in the church may not be the one that, is actually talking to the person who needs it, but maybe they're referring you to someone else who may be a better fit because, you may not want to get into that, that kind of, I guess, confidential kind of relationship with someone that you go to church with. Even though you're supposed to be maintaining, confidentiality and stuff like that, it may be better for you to refer.
Right. But at least the link could be there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. All right. So I'm going to take some questions from the audience. We have one from Sabrina Wallace. I believe that's Melissa's cousin.
Yes,
So
it is.
Here's her question. I hope you're still on. She says, "Hi, everyone. This is Sabrina from Philly. Shout out to Philly. We got another Philly person in there. Melissa's cousin. My question is, what advice do you have to give young people ages 5 through 16 interested in participating in a church program or even attending church?"
I feel like back in the day, we lived and breathed in the church. I think that with anything, you have to find what interests your child. So if your child is into art or something like that, maybe there are classes at the church that are art classes to help involve them with things that they like. I feel like at church, when we were growing up, there was always something going on that, we were interested in. And that helped lead us to say, all right, I want to spend more time at the church. It could be that you're providing support services, like maybe you're providing tutoring or things like that, things that people need. I feel like the church is supposed to be helping people in those areas. Sports. I mean, I feel like all of these things we've done in the past have worked in some respects, but maybe we, do a focus group and find out from that age group or the parents of those kids of that age group what's going to work. I think the other piece is parent involvement. Ages 5 through 16, man, that's prime parenting age. There's a lot going on. And I feel like as a society, we're really overscheduled. We schedule out everything. Our kids are in all kinds of activities. And by the time we are finished with those activities, anything related to church is like, oh, we got to do that. Okay, well, let's figure out how to, fit this into our routine. Mm-hmm. So I think that trying to figure out what the need is by, let's say, polling parents and children to find out what their interests are is probably a good way to go. We can't make an assumption about what we think children that age need or what the parents need. It could be that those needs have changed over time. Let's say, for example, like during the pandemic, if there was a way for the church to be a place where kids could go to do virtual school and provide support systems there so that they can start getting used to being in that space and meeting people who may be associated with the church. That may be a way to get more people involved.
Yeah, and it's an interesting age group. Like, for instance, I'm growing up, that age group, it wasn't about what are you interested in. You went to church if your parents went to church.
Yeah. Choice.
That was it.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe that's a question for today, I guess. It wasn't a question for some time ago. Not at that age group.
No.
Yeah.
Because my mom and daddy took me, and I didn't have a choice.
Yes.
So that maybe I don't have a good answer for that one in that age group.
But and you're right, Tiffany. We didn't have a choice.
No.
And I remember living in New York, I lived in Long Island, and my mom and dad got up bright early in the morning, and we went, it's Sabbath school, and it started, it's Sabbath school, Sunday school. It started at 9 in the morning and went all the way after. And my parents were part of the board and board members. And I was still wearing my church dress, afternoon, AYS,
You were there all day.
my friends changed their clothes. I'm still in my church dress. And I was still there until 8, 9 o'clock. Now it went to social time and I'm still in my church dress. So I'm like, it wasn't a choice. And then, my parents put me, but I knew what they were trying to do. They were trying to set the foundation for me.
Exactly.
I think now, because I can honestly say this, and I know my mom is probably watching it, I got burnt out. And I don't want my son to be burnt out. I don't want him to get to a point like now, church is not open now, but I know at a certain point, I wanted, when people would come to me, Melissa, do you want to do this? I would be like, I don't do that anymore, because I've been on the usher board. I've been in the choir. I was part of the youth committee. So you become burnt out. And unfortunately, really your children now are suffering because now you've become that, but you still want to be able to hold that foundation. But then you go back into how you dealt with it and you're like, oh man, I don't know if I want to put my child through that same.
Right. So my question would be, after age 16, maybe 18, how do you get them back interested? Because in my case, again, we were the youngest of 11. My parents, Sunday morning, Sunday school, regular service. You went home, dinner was already prepared. You went back for 3 o'clock. You went back for 6 o'clock. It was all day. You had Monday night Bible study. You had Tuesday night prayer service. Saturday choir rehearsal. And that was it. You wouldn't even question about it. That's the way it was. And so being young of 11, some of us had the foundation, but some of them got to 18 and said, that's it.
Yeah.
That's what happened with our generation.
That's it. That's too much.
Yeah.
They couldn't wait to get to 18.
And I think
I get 18, I'm grown. I'm not. That's it. Mom, y'all do it. It's too much.
Yep. And it's funny because you said that, because I know Jackie and Stacy might remember I played the piano. My parents started me playing the piano from like 6 and 7. When I got to like 18, I got to a point, my mother was calling me at 14, 15, 12, 13, those younger age. My friends are outside playing, and I was there playing, practicing on the piano. And now I'm acting like, wow, I wish I could still play. But I know what they were trying to do. I know they meant the best. They wanted the best for you, but they don't understand. It can wear on you. It can really sometimes wear on you.
I think what's important is allowing those young people to sit at the table when certain decisions are made. Allowing their voice to be heard. I think that's so important, because what it's going to do is going to create ownership. Instead of always being told what to do, sometimes it's good to ask them what they would like to do. And once again, making sure that you support them in their efforts. I think you'd be quite surprised when you sit down and you allow them. Sometimes they make more sense than we do.
No question.
So really allowing them to take ownership, giving them a voice at the table, and seeing what their interests are. That's what's going to keep them in. That's what's going to bring them back. I remember when I was younger, there were some friends that went off to college, and they came back and they wanted to do their own type of service, and they were able to plan it, implement it, and I was just wowed by it. It's like, wow, like they're doing their own thing, and you saw the passion that they had, and it made me want what they had even more, because 1, I can identify with them. 2, I saw them taking ownership, and 3, I really saw how sincere there was. So I really think that's one of the steps we can take to keep them and bring them back in.
And
Yeah.
your church supported it. That is like commendable, because I feel like that's part of the issue. The older generation is not letting go of certain things so that the younger generation can express who they are, what kind of Christian they are, separate from, who their parents and grandparents are.
Yeah. Yeah. So when my daughter came to me and she's like, Mom, I want to go to this church, which wasn't the church I was going to, I was open to it, amazingly. Some of my family was like, what do you mean she doesn't want to? You'll go as a family. I was like, no. As long as she wants to go, whatever's
exactly.
She's going. So let me support her interest in going, because she could be like, I don't want it at all.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's because of the way I was raised. It made me more open to, okay, baby, as long as you're going, as long as you're going, you're interested. I'm okay with that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's, again, introducing them to Christ and then letting them cultivate their own relationship.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys. It's just about 8 o'clock. That time went by so quickly. 2 hours, right?
Woo.
Wow.
It's like teaching a 2-hour class. It's not for the faint of heart. I commend everybody who survived.
Yes.
Email us. I put it right here in the chat at elephantinroom@gmail.com. Also, please subscribe to us on YouTube, like our Facebook page. The YouTube is, here it goes, is the Big E, the Elephant in the Room. I would like to just go around and see if any of our guests, do you guys have any like social media handles that you want anybody to follow you on? Anything like that you want to put No? Nobody's an influencer here?
I don't know if I need these people to scroll on my social media.
Social media is interesting. Especially during election time. I was like, CB, Trump is going to find you.
Oh, boy.
I think our panel's just a little bit below that part right there.
Okay,
I'm good.
It's all good. It's all good. So I would like one of our hosts, either one of you guys can close us off with our end tagline. You guys know it by heart right now. And then we'll say adieu to our audience.
Before we go, we want to run and then come back.
Oh yeah! Oh my gosh! Yes, this is very, I almost
the big reveal, Tiffany.
What was I thinking? Okay, yes.
We need everybody on. We have a big reveal.
Yes, fire the producer. She just really forgets stuff. So yes, so the Big E has we're going in a I won't say we're going in a new direction, but we are expanding our capabilities. But we just don't want to talk about stuff. We want to do stuff. And so I wanted to show you guys what we are working on right now. So give me a second to share my screen. One moment. Can everybody see this?
Yes.
All right, here we go.
Yes, dear.
Oh, I'm sorry. That was the other one. My bad. 1 second. That was not what was supposed to play. 1 second. Can everybody? Here we go.
Yes.
All right, here we go. Why is that double playing? Okay. This should be it. There we go.
At the Big E, we tackle the topics that the church needs to talk about. But we just don't want to see something and say something. We want to do something. Introducing the Big E, the Elephant in the Room, Life Changers, Inc., a nonprofit to help tackle the issues we talk about. The Big E, the Elephant in the Room, Life Changers, Inc., coming soon in 2021.
All right.
Wow.
So that is what we are expanding from not just, but we are expanding from our TV, internet, radio platform to forming a nonprofit where we are going to actually do things about the stuff that we're talking about. So Melissa and Jackie, you guys can speak to a little bit about what we're hoping to do this year.
Well, I know our consultant is on here listening, so I hope I can say what.
Get us in trouble.
You're funny.
But our plan, Jackie and I realized that our conversations weren't enough. So we expanded, and we will be expanding and launching a nonprofit organization, the Big E, the Elephant in the Room, Life Changers Inc. This will consist of various programs that we would like to connect with outside in the community, as well as in our churches, to provide all the resources that we've been discussing, such as counseling services, outreach programs. Hopefully, we will be also offering scholarship programs for individuals and young people that are possibly in need. So we just thought that we can't just talk about it. We want to actually place action in it. So that is what we're working on for 2021. And we have more to come in the next few weeks. So keep looking for us. We still be doing our web series and launching our web series every week or every other week. We got to work with our producer on that. But we will probably be incorporating actually more live stream to get more interaction with everyone and some more guests. So definitely out for that. But our nonprofit is definitely something that we've been itching about for quite some time. We have actually two of our board members on here. They got both of their heads down. They don't want to talk about it right now. So, but yeah, so we're very, very excited. And Jackie, do you have anything to add to that?
Oh, it's a wonderful work in progress. I want to thank everyone for a panel and coming back and talking about what they've spoken about and helping our listeners and their issues, whatever they have that's going on. Let the healing begin from here.
Yes. So thank you, everybody, for your time. Thank you to all of our audience. We really appreciate it. So Jackie and Melissa, sign us out.
Thank you for watching
the Big E,
the Elephant in the Room, where we speak
about the unspeakable.
Where we speak about the unspeakable. Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.
All right. Good night, everybody.
Bye-bye.